You might think Britain would be happy after the First Opium War. Wrong. By the 1850s, Britain wanted more. Full access deep into China, the right to sail its rivers, an envoy living in Beijing, and the grand prize, making the opium trade totally legal. They aimed to strip away the very last bits of China's pride and rule. They just needed an excuse. In 1856, the Arrow incident kicked things off. A Chinese ship suspected of smuggling was checked in Canton, and just because it was once tagged in Hong Kong, and that tag was dead, Britain claimed this was an insult to the British flag and an act of war. Soon after, France used the death of a French priest deep in China as an excuse to jump in and join the fight. These were the fake excuses that started the Second Opium War. In 1858, British and French troops used force to make China sign the Treaty of Tianjin, demanding they open 10 inland ports, let foreign envoys stay in Beijing, let priests walk free, and officially make the drug trade legal. When China pushed back the next year, the British and French forces launched a final crushing attack in 1860, marching straight to the gates of Beijing. To teach China a crushing lesson, the British boss, Lord Elgin, gave a dark order: burn down the old summer palace. This 860-acre royal garden, which took 150 years to build, held the absolute best of Chinese art and buildings. The troops looted it wild first, then set it on fire. The fire burned for 3 days, turning hundreds of years of art into ash. This wasn't a war target, it was just to shame them. As the French writer Victor Hugo angrily put it, 2 robbers broke into a museum, one plundered, the other burnt. This is what civilization has done to barbarism. With their capital under the gun and the gardens in ash, China was forced to sign the Beijing Pact. Not only did they have to agree to all the past harsh rules, but they also had to pay 8 million more silver pieces, give up Kowloon, and let opium sell freely across the whole land with no limits. At this point, China's armies were totally broken. Its cash was gone, and its rules were a joke. China was sliced up by foreign powers like a pie. The Opium Wars clearly showed the Qing government was weak, drawing sharks from all over the globe. Russia grabbed huge lands in the north. Germany took control of Shandong, France took the south and Vietnam, and even the US pushed its open-door rule to make sure it got a piece of the pie. China was split into zones of power, with foreign states running the docks, rails, and mines, and even setting up their own courts. On their own dirt, Chinese folks became second class, with some park signs famously reading, "No dogs and Chinese allowed." Meanwhile, legal opium ate the country alive. By 1906, 13.5 million people were officially hooked on opium, but the real count was likely 25 to 40 million, nearly 10% to 25% of China's 400 million people at the time. To compare, in Japan at the same time, the addiction rate was less than 0.1%. This was no fluke. It was the sheer result of foreign states pushing drugs on the country for decades. Families broke, workers failed, and a massive 100 million silver pieces fled the country, crushing the cash flow. Huge sums meant for roads, schools, and guns poured straight into British banks, leaving the Qing government broke and unable to keep the peace. Facing doom, some Qing men pushed a self-strengthening drive in the 1860s, trying to buy Western tools, build ships, and get modern guns. But rot ran too deep, and Empress Dowager Cixi, who held the real power, cared more for her throne than saving the country, making these fixes fail because they treated the skin, not the bone. By 1900, facing relentless pressure from foreign powers, the Chinese people launched the anti-imperialist Boxer Rebellion, showing their determination to resist foreign humiliation despite the limitations of the time. However, the result is an 8-nation army: Britain, France, Germany, Russia, Japan, the US, Italy, and Austria-Hungary marched into China. They crushed the Boxers, took Beijing again, and fined China a massive 450 million silver pieces. This fine was more than the government made in a full year. As experts point out, this wasn't just losing a war, it was the complete breaking of the nation's mind and spirit. The Chinese people saw their state could not protect them at all. The old crown was dead for good. In 1911, the Qing Dynasty, which ruled for over 260 years, finally fell. A revolt wiped out the kings, and China became a republic. But this wasn't a happy ending. The land fell into wild chaos and splits. Warlords carved up the map, fighting each other for power, and the main government was weak and empty. What was once a great culture was now a failed state. Yet the darkest days lay ahead. Japan took out its sword on China. After beating China in 1895 and taking Taiwan, Japan hit Manchuria in 1931 and launched a full war on China in 1937. The next 8 years became one of the bloodiest times in human history. In the 1937 Nanjing Massacre, Japanese troops killed 300,000 Chinese folks and prisoners in just 6 weeks. Women were abused, kids were slain, and the city fell to ruin. The Japanese even used prisoners for bayonet practice and killing games, and ran cruel medical tests with poison gas. Millions of Chinese died in this bloodbath. But inside this nightmare, a spark caught fire. The Chinese people who had been broken and split for so long began to unite through a shared hate for the invaders. 100 years of shame, anger, and the drive for payback built up like a locked volcano, finally forging a hard, new Chinese soul. In 1945, Japan was beaten. After the War of Liberation, the Chinese Communists won in 1949. On October 1st, 1949, in Tiananmen Square, a short, heavy cry rang out. The Chinese people have stood up. After 100 years of pain, bullying, and loss, China was whole again under strong rule. The land may have been poor and beat up, but what mattered was that China was now a China for the Chinese once more. After the founding of New China, the nation experienced arduous early explorations in its socialist development while governing such a massive country. Following these early harsh bumps, Deng Xiaoping opened the doors in the late 1970s. The practical motto, "Let some people get rich first," sparked the fastest money boom in human history. Over the next 40 years, hundreds of millions climbed out of the dirt, and cities like Shanghai and Shenzhen shot up into giant modern hubs. China became the world's factory, and by 2010, the #2 economy on the globe. Today's China matches the US in economic influence, possesses a highly modernized national defense, hosts the Olympics, builds space stations, and has even put rovers on Mars. But if you only look at these stats, you completely miss the point of modern China. China didn't let anyone forget the past pain. Instead, it forged this century of shame into the very core of who they are. From kids' school books to grand city museums, the message is loud and clear. This must never happen again. This deep fear of being weak again drives almost every move modern China makes at home and abroad. Why build a giant army? To make sure no foreign boats can ever sail up their rivers and take over at will, like they did in 1840 or 1937. Why stand so firm on the Taiwan question and maritime rights? Because to the Chinese, defending national sovereignty and territorial integrity is the absolute bottom line. Any attempt to infringe upon China's territory instantly sparks that old dread of being cut up like a pie by empires all over again. Why does China bite back so hard at Western scolding? When the West talks down to China on rights or trade, the Chinese don't see good faith. They see the exact same empire-building pride that fired the first shots in the Opium Wars, just another push to keep China down. This scar still hurts today. Sadly, the West just chose to forget it. Looted art from the Summer Palace sits proudly in British and French halls, while many in the UK know absolutely nothing about the Opium Wars and the ruin they brought to China. This huge blank spot in memory is the exact root of the deep clash between East and West today. The slicing up of China was completely unfair. For all these crimes, the attackers never paid back a dime and never gave a true apology. If you don't grasp what went down from 1839 to 1949, you simply cannot understand modern China. Through a century of turmoil, the sleeping dragon of China slowly opened its eyes. Now, it has awoken. The world must learn to face a China that no longer kneels.